Let's get today's session started. Hi, and thanks for joining us. My name is Ari. I'm the EMEA Marketing Coordinator here at eFolder, and I'll be your host for today's session. So welcome to the eFolder Expert Series. For anyone who's joining us for the first time, our webinars always bring together experts from our partner community and our staff members for a deep dive technical discussion on key services and technical topics. And since lunches and event marketing have been on many MSPs' radars for a while, we thought this was a really relevant topic for you to cover. So today's session is all about how to host successful marketing events, how to pull off lunch and learns, and all the things you need to consider while going about them. All right. So before I go through the agenda, I just want to cover a few housekeeping items. So today's session is being recorded, and the recorded version of the webinar will be made available both on eFolder's YouTube channel, but we will also send a copy of the slide deck and the recording to everyone who registered for today's event. So if you're based in the US and you got up at 2 or 5 a.m. to join this webinar, please go back to that. Don't worry, we'll definitely send out a recording. So just a heads up for that. And with over 200 people registered for today's session, we have put all participants in listen-only mode, as you may have noticed by now. And that means you can enjoy the audio portion of today's session either by streaming it on your computer or by dialing in over your phone. And of course, questions are strongly encouraged. Please do not hold back. We have planned a special Q&A section at the end of today's discussion, as you can see. But please just use your Q&A log on your right in your panel to submit questions as we go along, and then we'll try to address them on the fly. All right, so as you can see, today's presentation really follows a logical flow. First, we'll discuss opportunities and benefits that come from event marketing or lunch and learns in specific, and then systematically go over the to-dos before, during, and after your event. The part about the pre-lunch checklist is going to be the longest part of the presentation, just because there is quite a lot to consider and to cover before hosting an event. But yeah, let's make it fun and interactive, and thanks for tuning in. So first off, I would like to introduce our expert speaker for today's session, Laura Campbell. Laura is the marketing manager at Evoke IT, which is a UK-based MSP business up in Aberdeen, and she's been working with them for more than 3 years. And so during her time at Evoke, she's gained very valuable experience in really all aspects of MSP marketing, and one of them being how to host successful lunch and learns, and that brings her here today. So hi, Laura, and thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, thank you.
All right, so Laura, maybe you could just start off by talking a little bit about Evoke, just so people understand what you guys are doing and what kinds of clients you cater to, etc.
Yeah, of course. So we were primarily a software development company when we started in 2011, and then within the last year we diversified into managed services and IT support. So beforehand we were a software development house. We had SharePoint expertise. We had the largest team of SharePoint experts in Scotland. We worked really closely with other MSPs to provide kind of the whole IT package that felt we could kind of offer the whole package ourselves, do the IT support, do the setting up, do the servers, do the computers, and then therefore all the setup that we need for the software development applications was correct and the way we need it to be. So our clients are primarily based in Scotland, but we also have clients in London, we've got clients in Australia, Canada, and America actually. So industries include kind of all industries. We've got oil and gas primarily because we are based in Aberdeen, so that is a massive chunk of our client base. But we also work with construction, finance. We do a lot with the third sector and the public sector, in fact. And we've also got an office in Edinburgh that we're opening next week. So kind of our services are mostly software development, training, contractors, software development support, and IT support. So yeah, the full package with all the skills in-house, really.
Nice. All right, cool. Thank you. So let's just jump right in and get started on the topic on lunch and learns. So Before we go into more detail on the benefits of Lunch and Learns, I just wanted to quickly explain what exactly a Lunch and Learn is, just so we're all on the same page. So a Lunch and Learn is an hour-long lunch presentation that is facilitated by an organization and is designed to circulate information to attendees on a specific topic. And the great thing about them is that really they can be organized for any industry, by any type of company. And of course, for today, we're putting the focus on MSP organized Lunch and Learns, but really whatever industry your clients are operating in, it's something that is so easy to pull off and can really have great results. All right, so now that we know what a Lunch and Learn is, let's look into why organizing one could be really helpful to your company. Well, first off, it really strengthens the community. A Lunch and Learn can really help deepen the bond between not only the individual people that attend the Lunch and Learn, but also between the attendees and yourself. Because in addition, it is a great networking opportunity for everyone who attends the Lunch and Learn. So while the audience will enjoy the education portion of the webinar or of the Lunch and Learn and enjoy hearing from your expertise and learning from you, you should always consider that the networking opportunity is a huge one. So most likely the people attending the lunch are from similar industries or at least working with similar technologies. So really leveraging that networking aspect, and we'll go into more detail later on that, is something you should do for all of your lunch events. Third, it's a great direct form of contact. Unlike many other marketing initiatives, Lunch and Learns will make it so easy for you to avoid annoying things like being put on hold, dealing with any misunderstandings, or really having to send several emails back and forth with prospects to get your point across. So unlike all of these, your attendees get a super opportunity to just meet you, your business, maybe even your colleagues in your offices, depending on where you host your event. And then finally, and of course the most obvious reason, is lead generation. Naturally, marketing should always be about generating leads. But with many activities, it can be really difficult to measure how high these leads are in quality, right? But with Lunch and Learns, you immediately know that these guys and girls are really hot leads because even though you're giving them, an insightful presentation and food and drinks, they do have to sacrifice an hour of their time throughout the workday, and they do have to come out and meet you. So by going through that extra hassle, you already know that they're committed to a certain extent. And can really, really want to interact and share with you. Sorry, I just saw a question asking if this webinar will be recorded. Yes, it will be recorded, and the recording will be sent out to everyone who registered later today. So watch out for those emails. All right. So Laura, I know you guys have been doing Lunch and Learns for some time. How would you say has eBookingKey benefited from introducing the concept and hosting events like that?
Yeah, it's been really good for us. Like you said before, it gives you an hour of somebody's time where they are interested in the topic. You're not just speaking to somebody who you don't know isn't interested. They have a genuine interest, which is why they've given up the hour. And you're able to talk about all sorts of topics that wouldn't necessarily happen over a MailChimp or over the phone call. So it works great also as a brainstorming session for the client, because they can start seeing other things that we've done. We do demos, we show them exactly what can be achieved with Office 365 and SharePoint primarily, and it really gets them thinking, and then we're able to go, oh, we can provide that solution that won't cost that much, because people have this idea that everything's going to cost a lot of money, when actually with Office 365 you can achieve a lot out of the box with a little bit of end user training, which helps them a lot as well. So we've had 9 times out of 10 our topics are Office 365 and SharePoint, and it's just getting the most out of their licenses for the clients. So of course they're paying monthly licenses, they're going to have an interest and want to get the most out of it. So we kind of explore the basics of SharePoint and key user areas, and then from that we've quite often, well, about every second one, we're making money. We've either got a project that's come off the back of it, or a requirements gathering, or we've been able to put a SharePoint admin on site for a day, or just been able to, got a key interest now and they know what's achievable, so they want someone to sit with them and kind of achieve that. So we have definitely always, 9 times out of 10, always got a lead and always came out with a project, which has been really, really successful for us. We're the only IT company that offer it in Aberdeen, which is also sets us apart. So it's just something else you can offer. I mean, as part of the sales conversation, they might not be sure of something. You go, well, actually, you can have a lunch and learn, because they might not want to part with their money until they're absolutely sure. So it gives you another chance to sit in front of the client and explain the process, explain what they can get, and it just gives you more time with the client. And the more you can build up the relationship, the more chance you are to convert that into a project.
Yeah, I love that relationship point. That's a really good one. It can often help you speed up the sales cycle, or just, help them pick up a contract they've been hovering over, being undecided. So lunch and learns are a great way to just become more personal with them and really help them.
Absolutely, and it just gives another chance to build a bit more trust and then learn more about us, so that they know what they're getting, really. So yeah, it's really good for us.
Exactly. Yeah. Awesome. Now hopping into the ideal format for lunch and learn. Keep in mind, with a lot of this, it really depends on your own budget, and your target audience, and where you're hosting the lunch. We found that this format works really well both for vendors and for MSPs, but these are guidelines. These are not necessarily strict points to follow to make your lunch and learn successful, and if you don't, it's going to be a disaster. No, it's more of a, a guideline and lesson learned from people who have hosted successful lunch and learns. But a first important point is to find an upscale restaurant that has a private room. Now, the upscale part of the restaurant can be debatable, again, depending on your budget, but the private room is absolutely necessary, because you really want to have a quiet, secluded atmosphere that makes learning successful, and you want to avoid the distractions of the normal restaurant routine and getting people distracted by servers and other people around you being served. So that's a very important point to consider. In terms of registrants, 20 to 30 is usually a good number to shoot for. Keep in mind that every person who signs up for your lunch is a hot lead. So the more sign up, the better for you. And something that we've learned is that usually on average, only 60 to 67% of the people who registered will actually show up for the event. And having 15 to 20 attendees is a really good goal to go for. Anything under 15, people might be apprehensive asking questions, and you as a presenter might have to just work a little more to make people interact with each other and ask questions and, ease up. But anything more than 20 can put you on the other end of the spectrum, where it becomes really difficult for you to address every question and really mingle with every attendee as much as you would like. So 15 to 20 is a good frame to be in. Another point to consider is having a very organized registration process. On one hand, that makes it so much easier for you to stay on track with your before, during, and after preparations of an event, but it also just reflects professionalism and how serious you are about using that hour they are giving you to the fullest extent. And then talking about time, an hour is usually a really good time for a lunch and learn. It's a time frame that people are happy to spare, especially if it falls during the lunchtime. But you do want to plan a little bit of time both before and after the session, because before, people are not going to arrive on the dot. It will take them a while to come in, and they want to order the menu and order the drinks and maybe mingle with each other. And then after the presentation, there should be time left for questions. When it comes to food, we've learned that a 3-course meal is usually perfect for an hour-long presentation, because it really balances out the time that you're spending talking without causing awkward lulls between meals. And it just keeps people busy and happy. Another optional point you might want to consider is offering complimentary beer and wine. We've learned that it really helps loosen people up and make them feel more sociable and more comfortable. A lot of people like having wine with their steak, for example. Of course, this is something that needs to align with your company policies and your values and the regions you're going into. But it's something that we've learned a lot of people just really appreciate and like to take advantage of. And then when it comes towards the end of the presentation, consider closing with a strong offer. Of course, the primary reason why people are there are because they want to be educated on a topic of interest. So never turn your presentation into a 60-minute long sales pitch. But do have a strong offer that really creates a sense of urgency for them and can help you speed up the sales cycle. And of course, never forget dessert. People love dessert, even if they don't have time to eat it in the restaurant or want to take it to go. It's always a nice gesture to just have them mingle a little more and really leave the restaurant properly stuffed and properly happy. All right, so let's go into our pre-lunch checklist. As I mentioned earlier, this is going to be the most extensive part of the presentation, but also a very exciting part of the overall planning process. So I myself have been organizing lunch and learns and different events with eFolder for the last 2 years, both across the US and across Europe. So there's a lot of stories and a lot of lessons learned along the way, but the most important lesson is being as organized as possible about your pre-lunch or pre-marketing event steps. All right, so for anyone who's gotten married before, this might look a little familiar, like a pre-wedding checklist, and it's very similar. It's a pre-lunch checklist with things to consider and have, assigning strict time frames to that. So in general, we recommend people starting to plan their lunch about 2 months in advance. But really, you'll be busy assigning tasks and checking off things from that list up until the day before the lunch. At eFolder, I usually organize up to 50 lunches a month and hosted a dozen in addition. So we usually start it much earlier than just 2 months in advance. But if you're hosting just a handful or just 1 or 2 events, 2 months is a solid timeline. And I'll now go into every one of these steps to make sure you guys understand exactly what there is to do. A lot of it may feel, very self-explanatory, but I just want to make sure that you guys know what points to consider when planning your lunch. So first off, starting 2 months before the event, you should start selecting your location. In many cases, this might just be the city that you're located in, but whether you're based in Europe or the US, chances are that you will have clients across the county, across the state, across the country even. And then in addition to your client base, you might also have high growth areas that you're not currently operating in, but that you know could be very promising for your business. And getting all these different regions under one, in one basket can be really confusing, but there are great softwares and websites out there that can make that much easier. So one platform that we use at eFolder is a website called espatial.com. And that's what we use to simply upload a list of all the partners that we have in the States, for example, in this case. And immediately you get an image of where these companies are located. And just having a visual representation like that makes it so much easier to select locations that make logistical sense and, are most promising to yield higher registration numbers. And then once you've selected your city, you should go and book your restaurant. And again, this falls under the 2-month time frame. Many bigger chains are very familiar with event lunches, and they're fully equipped to get the majority of the work done for you. And that's usually something that you'll see is going to be very helpful for your own planning process. So you want to get in touch with their event manager and just make sure that the respective location in the city that you want to go into has a private room and AV capabilities, audio and visual capabilities. That point is really important. Most of these restaurants, in every one of their chain restaurants, have a pull-down screen or has laptop cables that they connect your laptop to a TV with, or has a beamer. And just already having that on the spot and in the restaurant makes it so much easier for you, because otherwise you'll have to make a couple additional phone calls and rent a beamer externally. Just more things for you to coordinate and consider. So that's some of the points you want to clarify beforehand. A few of the venues that we spend lunches with are bigger US chains like Martin's Steakhouse, Ruth's Chris, the Capitol Grill, McCormick and Schmick's, or Gaucho and Viva Brazil, which are Argentinian steak restaurant chains in the UK. And we've had great experiences with all of them. Every one of these events was a major success, and just helped so much having restaurant representatives who knew exactly what they were doing. So do consider looking into these options too. But really, at the end of the day, the most important part is what works best for your target audience, right? You know your clients best, and you may decide to host your lunch or your event at your local favorite pub or restaurant, or in your offices. Really, at the end of the day, whatever works best for you. So then it's a month before the Lunch and Learn, and that's when it's time to build your registration page. So ideally at that point you have your city and your restaurant selected, you have a time and date set. eFolder has always used Eventbrite for our landing pages or registration pages, and Eventbrite is great. It's very straightforward to use. It has great integration tools, and you'll have your landing page set up and running within 5 minutes. One best practice here that we've learned along the way: already ask your prospects for the menu choices when they fill out the registration form. So even if you have not yet clarified the specific menu at that point, you can still get an indication of any dietary needs they may have, any allergies you should keep in mind, any exceptions that you need to pass on to the restaurant. By already asking that at the point of registration, you'll just save yourself any unexpected surprises on the day of the event. And then once the page is built, it's usually a really good idea to send these links to anyone in your company who has direct contact to prospects and partners. So your account managers or salespeople should be aware of that event, because then every time they talk to a prospect and partner, they can help spread the word. And lastly, if the event is hosted in an area that is not your home base, you should definitely book travel at that point, because hotels and flights are not going to get cheaper beyond this point. And you want to make sure that whoever represents your company at the event is all informed about the logistics and can make arrangements accordingly. So now 3 to 4 weeks before the lunch or before your event, and that's when it becomes time to create your recipient list. Now, if your entire database or your entire contact partner base is within the area that you're going to host the lunch or the event, you can just send out your invite to your entire contact base, right? But if you're going into a very specific city, make sure to filter out anyone who isn't near those locations, just to avoid them getting annoyed at invites that are really not relevant for them, and potentially unsubscribing from your email newsletters. And in addition to working with people that are already on your contact list, consider working with LinkedIn. So LinkedIn, even if you're not paying for a premium subscription, even if you're using just the free part of the social media tool, LinkedIn can be a great way to get people interested in your event. So if you're going into an area where you don't have a lot of clients, but you know that the market is strong, LinkedIn can help you search for people by location, by industry, by title, by their company size. Really, there's a lot of granularity going on, and it just makes it easier for you to spend an hour or two looking up relevant prospects that you could reach out to and invite along to your event. Now it's 2 to 3 weeks. The event is coming closer, and that's when you should start sending out your email invitations. So at eFolder, because we host so many different lunches, we usually send out 3 to 4 emails per event, spread out over 2 weeks. And I'm sure many of you listening in may have received the one or other invite from us, and may have been wondering why we send out so many on a regular basis. But the reason we do that is because email providers have become really smart, but also really strict about what they let into your inbox. So chances are that our invites end up in clutter or spam or junk. So that's why we like to send a couple of them, just to make sure that our recipients really did get our invites and are aware of our events. And then if you're not currently using an email platform, some platforms to look into are Pardot, Marketo, Vertical Response, MailChimp, or HubSpot, and that's really depending on the budget that you're working with. Laura, when it comes to your Lunch and Learns, what are some ways that you manage to drive attendance to the event, or even start off gauging interest? Like, how do you know how many people are interested in attending a lunch on that day in your office?
Yeah. Our Lunch and Learns are slightly different in that we do it kind of client specific. We don't kind of mix our clients in the one room. We have done once because we joined up with the local council, which was really good because we were able to tap into their mailing list, which were a whole new mailing list to us. But we were also able to tap into our own, so that kind of merged both parties, which was brilliant. So if you can merge with local councils, and it was called a business booster, because we were obviously trying to help other businesses in the city. So the council were keen to talk to us, we were keen to talk to the council, and we kind of merged together and did the event together. So that was a great way of getting into new contacts that we didn't know of. We use social media quite a lot. We use LinkedIn as well. We search for certain words in people's profiles, like you mentioned, which has worked really well. We send messages, and we have gained interest from that as well. But primarily, it'd be MailChimp. We send out a mailing list, a MailChimp to our mailing list, and it's Lunch and Learn specific. It says what the agenda is, and we just encourage people to reply to us with if they're interested, and we'll arrange a time and date for them and their company. We've got call to action buttons for Lunch and Learns on every page on our website as well. So at any moment that somebody's on our website, there's a bit that says not quite there yet, have lunch on us and we can teach you more. So we've got that button on our website on every single page. So people are aware that we do Lunch and Learns, and that they're free, and that at any given time they can come and have an hour with us, and they're not tied to anything. So that's worked really well for us. And we've got pay-per-click ads on Google. So if people were to search for certain keywords, our Lunch and Learn page on our website would come up, which has worked really well as well. So yeah, we do a few things, but primarily MailChimp, and we get good responses from that.
All right, nice. I like the point of just having a constant button on your website, because that can, especially if you're serious about doing an ongoing series of lunches, that can be really helpful. And just keeping a constant reminder to prospects and partners that you are offering that service, and also just helping with registrations. I like that. Right.
Yeah, we're looking at adding a calendar to the website so that people can see availability without having to get in touch as well, which might make the process a little bit smoother, because they can just go, oh, there's a slot available there, I'll take that slot. So we're looking into that as well, which might help people see what the process is.
Right. Just reducing the barrier of having to coordinate and just being able to see on one glance what's available. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So now we're down to 1 to 2 weeks before the event. And that's most likely when you'll have a pretty good idea of how your numbers are looking and how many people have shown interest and have registered for the event. If the numbers are lower than you have expected, going back into LinkedIn and looking up more contacts to get in touch via email can be really effective. But keep in mind that LinkedIn in-mails can be pricey. Right now it's $10 per in-mail. And you get that money back if they reply to your in-mail, but if they don't, it's money out the window. So really be specific in your searches on LinkedIn, and be as specific and personal when you do reach out to certain people and inviting them, so that they really know that you've taken the time to research them, and are not just generically sending out in-mails to 200 people on LinkedIn. Another best practice here is to never ever send the registration link via in-mail right away. LinkedIn has a scoring system for in-mails, and if they notice that you send out a bunch of registration links to people you've never interacted with before, they're going to lower your score and maybe even block you from sending in-mails to people that are not in your contact list. So always wait for them to reply to you. Just do a very generic, hey, looked at your profile. I was wondering if you'd be interested in the topic. It's near you. Would love to have you join us. And only then, when they reply, send them the registration link to avoid any surprises on LinkedIn. Another point to consider, and that's proven very important for us, is doing sanity checks. Especially if you have specific verticals that you're targeting and that you're focusing your events on, make sure that the right types of people are registered. If you're going after the legal vertical, for example, but suddenly you see that there is a huge number of medical or construction or finance companies registered, you might want to consider uninviting them. And you can be very nice and courteous about it, but even though it might seem unpleasant to uninvite people that have already registered, it's still better than feeding the wrong kind of people and spending money on the wrong types of businesses. Because at the end of the day, you do want to get the right kinds of leads out of your event. So doing sanity checks 1 to 2 weeks before and then on an ongoing basis from then on can just increase the quality of the people attending your event. All right, so then the Friday prior to the lunch, that's when we send out something called Wingman Blast. And a Wingman Blast, in our case, serves both as a reminder email, but also invites anyone who registered to bring either a colleague or a friend of the industry. That's how we phrase it. And that's been really successful for us. We've learned that people often feel more comfortable actually attending the event if they can bring someone that they know. So that will help with your show-up rate, but it will also be a great additional lead generation source for you since, again, the more people sign up, the higher your lead number. So really both parties win. And then if you're planning on hosting several different events in various different locations, consider sending out a package straight to the respective restaurant. And that package could include anything like name badges, a registration list, so it makes it that makes it easier for you to keep track of everyone who attends and shows up on the day off. But you can also include collateral like marketing handouts or pencils. So that's just something to consider doing. And it makes it easier for your salesperson on the day off to not have to carry all that stuff around with themselves because it's already at the restaurant. All right, so now the final countdown, 1 to 2 days before the lunch. It's almost showtime. Remember to always update your restaurant contacts with a more specific number of attendees. Usually when you book the restaurant, you give them a ballpark figure, like 20 people, but you might realize it's going to be 30 or 8. And it's really important for the restaurant to know that so they can set up the room accordingly also. And that's also when you can pass on any dietary information, any allergies or food restrictions. Give them that heads up so they can, worst case scenario, provide alternative menu options for these registrants. That's also when you want to clarify the timeline and the menu with the restaurant, so both of you are as prepared as possible. Something that we usually do is, as mentioned, we do a 3-course menu, and we already finalize the entree or the first meal and the dessert, but give the audience an option for the main course, and that's usually a meat option, a steak option, a fish option, and a vegetarian option, just so everyone is satisfied. And again, it makes it easier and faster on the day off for people to actually select their food. And then 1 day before the lunch, you want to get your reminder calls going. So reminder calls really mean you go through your registration list and you call up every single one of your registrants and just tell them that you're looking forward to the lunch tomorrow and seeing them there and meeting them there. And that really can be tedious, especially if a lot of people are registered, but it can go a long way. So reminding your attendees via a call, it's just courteous, it's more personal, and it really reduces the likelihood of people who may have registered 3 weeks ago totally forgetting about the event, right? We're all busy, we all know how it goes. So at eFolder, we went through a phase where we didn't do reminder calls, and the effect on the show-up rate was dramatically different. So we usually have 60 to 67% of people attending with reminder calls, and only a third, so like 33 of the registrants attending when we don't do them. So definitely remember to do them. It can go a long way and can really help with your show-up rate on the day off. All right, so now that we've planned out all our steps beforehand and put a lot of time and effort into, planning out the event, it's time to look into event practices on the day off. So Laura, I know you've already mentioned that your events usually look a bit different, but how do you organize them on the day off? What's your timeline? How many people do you usually have attend? Do you have food coming in before or after the presentation? How does it look for your company?
Yeah, of course. It's usually an hour, like we've said, and we kind of give the option to the client to kind of pick an hour between 11 and 1:30. just so it is over lunch. It's typically either at our office, because we've got in our boardroom, or on the client site, whichever is easier, whichever is easiest for the client really. And we usually have about, it can be anything from 2 to 12 people attending, and just depends on the size of the company, depends on who's interested, depends who's making decisions, and who's available really. So we don't limit it. If we've had a lunch and learn with just one person before, which was absolutely fine. So it's really easy really. We bring the lunch is normally a selection of sandwiches that we order in from a local sandwich company, and we have them out when they arrive, and they kind of eat during the presentation, which makes it a little bit more relaxed. It's not so structured, and it's kind of just a bit more easygoing. Our content is usually quite consistent in that it's always about Office 365 and SharePoint, but we do try and tailor it to each client. So if they've got a particular interest in an application, or there's applications that we've done before for that particular industry, then we'll tie that in just so it's a bit more relevant to them. But the look and feel and kind of the structures normally pretty same. We focus on a lot of things, again, end user things for Office 365 and SharePoint. We also look at the apps that people don't know about, which like Sway, Delve and Yammer, which are all part of your subscription, but many people don't know anything about them. So we kind of go into them in quite some depth so that people feel like they really have came away with something new. We aim to do about 4 a month, so it's kind of 2 a fortnight. We kind of aim to do, there's just me and the marketing coordinator that do them, so it's just kind of finding the time, but we do aim to have about 4 a month, which works well for us. And yeah, that's kind of how they look for us.
Nice. And we have a question about the topics on the Lunch Learn, and how to select the right topics, what works, what doesn't work. So you said you're focusing primarily on Office 365 and SharePoint. How did you figure out that that was going to be a topic of interest, and how do you find out when to adjust the topic depending on your attendees?
Yeah, so it depends where the leads came from. If the lead for the Lunch and Learn came from a sales meeting, then there has been some sort of discussion around something to do with IT, Office 365 applications, something. So that kind of steers us in what direction we can kind of diversify into. In terms of why we chose Office 365 and SharePoint, it's what we know best, it's what our core is. We work very heavily with SharePoint, and there's a lot of misunderstandings out there. There's a lot of bad experiences that we are keen to turn around. So there's a lot of ill feeling towards SharePoint, so it's up to us to try and turn it around. And I think with the new Office 365 and SharePoint, there's so much that the user can do, and it's just about aiding them with the knowledge and the tools so that they can have control, instead of having to, because typically with the old platforms, they were so unuser friendly. So we're just trying to enable the control back into the user really and get the most out of their licenses, because it's not, it's in our interest to help them as much as we can really.
Right, awesome. And maybe from my own experience, to add to that question of how to select the right topic, at eFolder we've really done a whole series of different topics, and we've based that decision on feedback we got from the sales team, right? Because they are the ones who have a lot of, personal interaction with prospects, and they are the ones who hear the most about complaints of certain technology aspects and pain points. So our lunches usually cover our product portfolio aspects, so file sync, cloud-to-cloud backup, BDR and disaster recovery. But we've learned that it is usually harder to get people to a product-specific Lunch and Learn. So if you're desperately trying to market a certain product that you want to ramp up, that usually is really difficult, because especially if people don't know the product, they're more hesitant to come, especially if they don't know your company either. So we've learned that keeping the topic more generic or more general and focusing on pain points instead of products has yielded the highest success rate. And then a lot of it is also learning by doing. While file sync and the whole pain point of sharing files while also being secure has been really successful for us, it may not be for your own company. So really talking to your sales team and figuring out where are needs or where are questions in our prospect base, and then going and educating them about that can be really successful. And in addition, you could also decide to choose very general topics like cybersecurity. That's something that newspapers and media is talking about all the time, but there's still a lot of insecurity around that whole topic. So picking general topics of interest and also just scouting the news and seeing what people are talking about these days can be another good way of selecting your topic. All right, let's keep going. So now this is the day of the lunch. And if there's something that I've learned doing all these lunches is that timeline is really what matters. So you really want to work with your sales or with the waiting staff at the restaurant and really make sure that they have the timeline down. As I mentioned, an hour roughly is a good time frame for a lunch line, but then we tag on an extra 15 minutes for travel time for ordering drinks and networking before and after. So the way we usually work it is that we tell people to arrive by 12, and then whoever comes and presents from our company, whoever's our company representative, arrives at the restaurant at 11 to really have an hour to make sure that the room is set up as it should be, to have time to discuss the timeline with the waiters, to make sure the audio and visuals are working great. You really want to have that time to also just calm down and, gather yourself. Another good practice is having a registration table at the entrance of the room so that people have to pass you, and you for sure have time to mark down if they attended, to mark any walk-ins. Sometimes people register after you've already been on your way to the lunch, and you still want to make sure that these people are accounted for when they show up in the restaurant. And it also gives you time to just meet everyone in person and let them know who they are, and vice versa. So timeline-wise, we give people about a 20-minute time frame to arrive, and then we tell the waiters to have the salads or the entry course on the table at 12:15, and then really, serve the next following course in a 20-minute interval. Nothing is more awkward than being almost through with your presentation. The salads have been finished, half an hour ago, and the main course is still not coming. That has happened before, and it makes it very stressful for you as the presenter, because you want to present the subject, but you also want to, coordinate with the waiting staff. So definitely make sure that that's, covered beforehand and coordinated as much as possible. The desserts are optional. Many people decide to take them to go. We always give people the option of leaving at 1, if they have very limited time. And we make sure that our presentation part is done between 12:15 and 1 p.m., just so people who have to leave are fully aware of, the content and have the most important points in mind. So just work with the service really well to manage expectations on the day off for both sides. Another lunch is over. Hopefully it was a great success, but your work isn't quite done yet. There are still a few things that you want to touch upon after the lunch. First off, you should always capture information on all of your registrants. So who attended, who did not, who walked in late, what is their phone number and email address. And because, like I mentioned, walk-ins are just as valuable in terms of leads. So make sure that everyone who was in the room and ate your lunch has been accounted for. And then just make sure that you get that list over to your salespeople as soon after the lunch as possible. Because these guys are very hot leads, and you want to make sure that they can be followed up with as soon as possible. And then if you already know that they're very, high-profile clients of yours attending that you haven't had a lot of personal time with, you might want to invite them to stay a little longer if they have the time, invite them to an extra glass of wine or a second round of dessert, and just get a little more personal time in with your clients or partners. All right, So now that we've covered all the basics, I just want to reiterate some of the factors that will really help boost the success of your lunch and learns. Some of them I already mentioned, but first off, a great invite list is important. So making sure that you're sending out your emails to highly relevant prospects and clients in both the right target market and the right location will go a long way in just yielding a more positive response rate and higher registration numbers. And you also want to build your content in a way that it is targeted towards the people that are attending, especially if it's a smaller group and you can actually get a really good overview of who the guys are that are going to join your lunch. You know, throw in industry or company-specific references and just make it more relatable for the people that will attend. And then, like I mentioned, never turn your content into a 60-minute sales pitch. No one is going to come back for a second round of a lunch event if they've sat through, you know, an hour wasted in their minds. Another good idea, if you're just getting into lunches, is partnering up with other companies for joint ventures. If there are vendors or MSPs that you think you could partner up with, do it. Don't be shy to cooperate, because really what it gives you is it can give you an additional number of registrations, additional financial support to cover the food, and a backup presenter. And that might sound underrated, but it can be really helpful to just have a second person there who can help answer questions and coordinate the content. Another very important point, don't skimp on the food or the venue unless you're on a very tight budget. It just gives people a better incentive to actually show up to the lunch if it's a restaurant that they wouldn't go to on a regular basis. And if you know that they get a 3-course meal, that's much different from the usual, you know, company servery lunch. If there are, you know, any issues with logistics, practice makes perfect. Ideally, you want to get your logistics down just so you do seem more professional and just things, you know, flow smoother. But at the end of the day, no lunch and learn wizard has been born overnight. So don't be afraid to just try and experiment and have fun doing it. Lunch and learns are a great way to become more personal with your attendees. And if you have the budget, if you have the time, don't get discouraged if the first 1 or 2 events maybe didn't work out the way you should or the way you thought they should or didn't get the registration numbers you thought they would. Practice makes perfect. And a lot of marketing activities people jump into and then give up after 1 or 2 attempts. But with anything in marketing, it takes time to really build a presence, build a cadence, and then, you know, perfecting the practice. So keep at it. And then also be very consistent and strict in your RSVP list management. You will get nothing out of your event by just letting anyone in. So you really want to educate and feed the right kinds of people, which means you need to be persistent in uninviting anyone who's not relevant for you. And then lastly, never forget that there's very different kinds of event formats. We've been focusing mainly on lunch and learns because these are the most popular, the most commonly known and practiced. And here at eFolder, we've done a ton of lunch and learns, but there are so many kinds of event formats that may or may not work better for your target group. So like Laura said, you could invite people into your office and cater lunch and make it client-specific. You could also consider doing a brunch and learn, you know, where you invite people over for breakfast instead of a lunch. Do it from 7:30 till 9 so it doesn't cut into any of the work time. Or do a happy hour. That's something that we've been trialing for a while, and it just means you invite people for a 5 p.m. brew and some bites, you know, have appetizers, and then while people mingle and drink, you just present your content. Consider cultural aspects. We've learned that, for example, happy hours have worked much better in the UK. People really like their 5 p.m. Pub time, but you know, in the US, lunch and learns have been much more successful. So, like I said, keep trying, keep at it. There's no one perfect secret lunch and learn sauce. A lot of it also depends on your client base. All right, so that brings us to the end of today's topic. And that means it's time for your questions. If you have anything you want clarified or anything that wasn't clear, please don't hesitate to ask. we're happy to answer anything. No, I don't see any questions. Laura, I had a couple more questions, just more general to your marketing. Because a lot of MSPs come to us and are very hesitant doing anything with marketing because they work with very low budgets, and that's very understandable. So how do you, how much does a lunch and learn cost you on average, the way you pull it up, and how do you overcome budget constraints?
Yeah, I mean, we also work on a very tight budget as well. So that's why we host the event in our office or at the client's office. And not only does that mean you're not having to pay to hire a room or extra cost from food and drink, it's also a little bit easier. Aberdeen is horrendous for traffic, so if it's taking time out of our day to get to them, then the client's time is the most important. So that saves them time and effort. They just need to jump up from their desk and take an hour out. Alternatively, we've found that some clients like to take the time out of the office and like to come to us. So I think really hosting it either on site or on your client site really does have multiple benefits, but also saves on money. We do have the only cost us is the sandwiches, and they're roughly £20 to £30, which it depends on how much of what you're selling, but for us that's quite a small cost for what the outcome could potentially be. So we're always happy to make that spend. In terms of coming over budget restraints, when you're speaking to their clients, we really encourage them to use their resources, and where possible, if we can train the trainer, then that really helps them with their budget constraints. So yeah, so I like to say there's umpteen different ways that you can do lunch and learns or have somebody's time for an hour and learn from them. But we found that doing it in our office and on theirs has found to be the best solution for both. Really.
Awesome. And we have another question. Is a 3-course meal not a bit extreme? It really depends. I think a big factor is a budget here. If you are working with a small budget, obviously the more meals you add or the more courses you add to your meal, the more expensive it's going to get. But you would be surprised how long an hour can be if you stand in front of a crowd and they are not busy eating. Because especially if they know it's a really nice restaurant, many people expect more than just one course. So of course there are alternative ways to host a lunch. You could just, keep them busy with whatever drink they wanted to drink, and then have 1-course meals coming in, and just spread out the time a little longer. But people also eat really fast. It's something I've learned. So many people are done with their salads in 5 minutes, and with their main course in 10, and then dessert. If they still have room, that's another 10 minutes, and you're still talking and talking and talking. So we've just found that 3-course meals are very popular, very appreciated, and just, are a good balance for how long your presentation is. So, I mean, on the other hand, if your presentation is 20 minutes, don't go for a 3-course meal, because then that's going to be just very stressful for everyone involved. So it depends a little on how you're picturing your event format to look like. All right. And I don't think we have time to go through all these questions anymore, since we're approaching the end of the presentation. But maybe just to sum up, in addition to Lunch and Learns, what other marketing activities are you guys doing? And among that pool, which ones have you found are the most engaging ones?
Yeah, of course. So we're on social media. We don't do Facebook. We just do Twitter and LinkedIn, which we find to be really successful. LinkedIn's been really successful for us for recruitment. LinkedIn especially for the more experienced roles, but Twitter has been really good for us for getting students. They've been really, really successful. We also put blogs on our website, so we're trying to tailor to a number of audiences. So we've got the developers in-house who write blogs to help the developing world. So they are looking for shortcuts, looking for bugs, and we've got the solutions, and that helps us in Google and rank SEO, gets our traffic up. We've got one blog that gets hundreds and hundreds of hits every day, which is just awesome. So it's a common error that is coming up in SharePoint, and we're the first page that people come to, so that's brilliant. So we do news articles a lot, we do press stuff, we do Google Ads, and we do exhibitions, we do events, and we do guest lectures at the universities, which also gets us in front of the students. So when it comes to recruitment, they know us already, and that really, really helps. We've got a massive push on always recruiting graduates. We found it to be so successful, so getting in front of the universities is great. And also, the papers pick it up because you're doing something in the community. So it's quite good for publicity that way. Most successful lately, probably been the pay-per-clicks on Google. Although we're based in Aberdeen, people often think, oh, well, you can only service within a short kind of distance. But we've got clients in London, we've got clients in Dundee, and they're some hours away, and there are umpteen other providers that are closer to them. But through pay-per-click ads and our other marketing, we've came up top and gotten big projects off of them. So that's probably been the greatest return on investment is pay-per-click on Google. But also attending industry events have been really successful for us. Yeah, they all work to a certain extent. They all need each other to work. All the marketing needs to tie together and needs to all work for everything to work. So yeah, we do a lot of things, but they're all pretty successful, to be honest.
Right, great, thank you. All right, so that wraps up our webinar today. Thank you so much for everyone attended. Thank you, Laura, for joining us today and sharing your experiences. It was great. So yeah, everyone, watch out for the slide deck and the recording later today. If you have any questions, want to follow up, get in touch with Laura. Email me at apollock@efolder.net, and we'll stay in touch. All right, have a great day, everyone, and thanks for attending. Bye.